Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Charity Rouse. I'm the Director of Local History for the Spartanburg County Public Library System. And glad you're here to learn more about the US Federal Census. Broken this up into two parts. So part one is tonight. Part two will be next month on the first Monday. And that will cover 1900 to 1950. And we'll talk a little bit about the Indian censuses next month. And normally I have a colleague in the chat, and I apologize. We're having some technical difficulty on our end. The handout is in the chat, and hopefully everybody can download that because it's 17 pages of handout. So, and if you're watching the video, it'll be in the link underneath in the description of the video on the YouTube channel. We are recording this for the library's YouTube page. So, what are federal censuses and why do they start in 1790? Well, they were first taken in 1790 because we weren't a country until 1783. And so it is authorized by Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States. They are taken every 10 years, and the purpose is to apportion seats in the House of Representatives and taxes. Although direct taxation did not happen until much later, the provision allowed for it from the beginning. It does include the whole number of free persons, excluding Indians not taxed, and 3/5 of all other persons, read enslaved population, prior to their emancipation in 1865, and the Constitution was actually amended in 1868. So, you know, a lot of people are like, but why can't we go before 1790? Well, because we weren't a thing. So you may find some state censuses, which on the last page of the handout, last two pages of the handout, you will see some indications of what states took censuses when, and we'll get to that just a little bit at the very end of tonight's program. So, now, one thing, and this doesn't really affect the censuses we're talking about tonight since they've been in public domain for a while, but there is a 72-year rule, and so privacy restriction is a thing in the 20th century. And so the 1950 census is the most recent census we have, and it was released on April 1st, 2022. Not all censuses ask the same questions, so you will find different things asked at different time periods. And so the Indian census is for those on the reservations, supposed to be taken yearly. And again, we'll look at that a little bit more next month. Where do you find censuses? You find censuses on Ancestry, Ancestry Library Edition, Family Search Has Some, Find My Past, My Heritage, and other places. You can even find them on the National Archives website. It's a little bit clunky, but they're there. And then you may find other resources such as enumeration district finding aids and things like that at stevemorse.org. So stevemorse.org, make sure it's .org. If you do .com, it will be Steve Morse, the guitar player for Deep Purple. Very different website, met both of them. They're great guys. However, stevemorse.org is the one you want for census information. Okay, there is a timeline of censuses that you need to be aware of. Again, 1790, right after we became a country, we had to figure out apportionment for House of Representatives. And up until we hit the current number of representatives, which I believe is 435, the number just kept growing, and then they ran out of space. So they decided 435 was the number. So it's just one of those things that you just have to deal with. Every 10 years. They reapportion and readjust, and this is why we have the Congress districts, and some states lose and some states win in population changes. But from 1790 to 1840, it is the name of the head of household and then tick marks in categories or demographics for everyone in the household, including enslaved, because of course enslaved counted for every 3/5 of a person was a slave. In 1850 and 1860, there were separate forms for free inhabitants and enslaved inhabitants. Census form is called a schedule. So if you hear me say schedule tonight, that's what it means. And then in 1860 through 1890, there were some special schedules, such as agricultural, mortality, industry and manufacturing, and the always popular defective, dependent, and delinquent classes. So, I don't have an example of that one tonight, but I have examples of some of the other schedules. Starting in 1850, every inhabitant was listed by name. 1870 is the first census that every inhabitant is listed on the same census. And then 1890, we'll talk a little more about this in a little bit, but there was a fire. But each family was recorded on its own sheet. And it was very cool. I just wish more had survived. So, when we look at the 72-year rule, it goes from what was the date given on the census and what was the day they were supposed to keep it going. And so in 1790, Census Day was 2nd of August. They allotted 9 months, and it took them 18 months to take it. The US Federal Marshals were in charge of taking the census between 1890 and 1790 and 1840. And so they went around and did the collection. You see there, 4th of August in 1800, it took them 9 months. 6th of August in 1810, it took them 10 months. You know, population is growing. We are spreading westward across the country, so there's more space for the census takers to cover, for the marshals to cover. And 1830, they moved it to June instead of August, because, you know, if you start in August, you run into winter faster than if you start in June. 1840, it took them 18 months. 1850, it took them 5 months. And it started creeping its way down after 1850. So 1880 and 1890, they accomplished the census taking in 1 month. I think we were a little slower than that in 2020, but again, it's a reasonable amount of time. But if you're wondering why someone did or did not show up on a census where they might not supposed to have been because they weren't born until 8 months after the census date, you may find that people couldn't remember 18 months later when someone was in the household or not. They just gave the current listing. So always look at the upper right-hand corner and see if there is a date of the enumeration. The enumeration is the count. So in 1790, you're going to see 3 different styles of census reports for 1790, depending on the area and depending on which copy survived to be distributed. So this is actually a copy where it is in household order, and you see the number of the household in the left-hand column, the name of the head of household, and some additional information about the household, as to who was there. And we'll get the breakdown on the next slide, I believe. So there was a copy in 1790, still handwritten, that was alphabetized, and you can see kind of has the census, the heading of the lines on there. And I have got to get, sorry, I've got to minimize a few things so that I can see my notes. Okay. So this is the alphabetized report, because on the census, there are always multiple copies. There is the copy that was taken at the local level, often a copy that was kept at the local level, or a copy was made and kept at the local level. And then there was a copy sent to the state, there was a copy sent to the feds, because state legislatures are also apportioned by the federal census numbers in many states. South Carolina is one of those, because we've rarely done our own census. So, and the information collected by the US Federal Marshals, they were sworn to secrecy about what they were collecting. But between 1790 and 1840, they would go around and put this alphabetical list up at some central location, the courthouse, the general store, I'm not sure which, probably depended on the community. And people were supposed to double check that the count for their household was correct. There was no real worry for people, because it was just the name of the head of household and some demographic text. You also get a typed copy of the alphabetized list published for many of these early censuses. I'm not going to show you this for every one of the censuses with these indexes and with the lists, but just know that they do exist, and you may be able to find your people in a multitude of ways. And sometimes it's easier to look at the book for extremely creative spelling. Let's just put it that way. So in 1790, what questions were asked? The first, it's the name of the head of household. The first column is free white males of 16 and over, including the heads of family. The second column is free white males under 16 years old. And then the third column is free white females, including heads of family. It doesn't matter how old you were. If you were 2 months old or you were 90 years old and female, you free and white, you are in that. The fourth column is all other free persons. And then the fifth column is the enslaved. So you can see in this that there are multiple slave owners, as would be expected in Georgetown District, South Carolina in 1790. So in 1800, we're back to the handwritten version, and this one got a little messy. This is, and I'm sorry, I'm having to go back to, okay. It's not liking having too many windows open on my computer. I apologize. In 1800, this is Marion District, because Marion District got made out of Georgetown District. This is Liberty County. listed on the side there. Names did change over time, so just because it's a certain county today does not mean it was that county or that location. I have family in Virginia that they have lived on the same land in Dougspur, Virginia, and for a couple centuries now, and I think the land has been in up to 10 jurisdictions. So lines move around people as much as people move into different locations. So if you're not finding people where you expect them, double check that your place that you're expecting them is correct. And for all of these census headings, some pages, because they were handwriting lists, they saved their hand, they only wrote them on the first page of each enumeration district. So you may have to page back to the beginning and see if they wrote them there, or check for census blanks, such as the ones in your handout packet, because they will let you know what the columns mean. On this one, it is the name of the head of family. It is free white male in the following grouping: under 10, 10 to 15, 16 through 25, 26 through 44, and 45 and over. Free white females, same categories. All other free persons get one column, and enslaved get one column. So in this, William Allen, presumably my William Allen, had three free white males under 10, 6 between 16 and 25, 1 male, free white male between 26 and 44, and 1 over 45. Free white females, 2 under 10, 2 between 10 and 15, and 1 45 or over, and 9 enslaved. So it doesn't tell you a whole lot, but it can help, along with some other documents, prove location, and you can at least get an idea if this is the right family or not. So in 1810, again, Marion District, Liberty County, and again, that's on the side. You get the name of the head of family, free white males, and similar demographics to the 1800 census. But some of these are a little frustrating to read because you don't always get clear column marking. And this is in blow up of the 1810. So in 1820, this is one of the alphabetized lists that was sent on. So it is not in household order, which can also be helpful for household order if you sorry, I keep getting text. If you can see who the neighbors are, household order can really help because it helps you know kind of where it does. Okay, so in 1820, they expanded the number of categories, and the William Allen here may be William Allen Jr., not Senior. Haven't quite figured that out yet. Still working on it because there were potentially 2 William Allens in the county. But some of the categories that are added is foreigners not naturalized. So we had some immigration post the formation of the country. Basically, the formation of the country, if you were born in a colony here, you were automatically granted citizenship. If you came in after, or if you immigrated then you might have to fill in citizenship paperwork. They did also start asking for the numbers of persons engaged in agriculture, in commerce, and in manufacturing. Now, and in 1820, they start dividing the enslaved into age categories as well. Under 14, 14 to 25, 26 to 44, and then 45 plus. And then the same categories for free colored persons, and then all other persons except Indians not taxed. So Indians get into very strange categories depending on whether they are living on sovereign land with tribal land, or if they are living in the larger community. So they might be counted in one place, they might be counted in another place. So in 1830, they keep adding divisions. So all of a sudden we get for free males and free white females, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 5 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, 70 to 79, 80 to 89, 90 to 99, and 100 plus. And do you notice something about this form? This form has been printed, so there's less writing the enumerator has to do. And then, if you notice on the front page here, we only have one category, which is free white people. On the back of the page, always look at the back of the page, no matter what document you're looking at, always look to see if there is something relevant on the back of the page. And on the back of the page, it breaks out enslaved males and females categories for 0 to 9, 10 to 23, 24 to 35, 36 to 54, 55 to 99, and 100 plus. And then free colored persons get those same categories. But then the social scientists are starting to get involved in this. And in that right-hand side of the page, they want to know, for the white people, are any in the following categories? Deaf and dumb, can't hear, can't speak. In 3 age categories, 0 to 13, 14 to 24, and over 25. And then if there is someone who is blind, all ages get put together in blind. And then aliens, not the little green Martians, just foreigners not naturalized. As I said, by 1820 into 1830, we had a fair amount of immigration post the revolution. And so they do want to count who has been naturalized, who's not naturalized. Slaves and colored persons, they ask the same questions about deaf and dumb and blind. So you're starting to get more information by 1830, even if it is just tick marks. In 1840, again, this is on 2 pages, make sure you look at the back. Thompson Allen is my person on this page. And it adds, in addition to the lots and lots of breakdown of age categories for free white persons, free persons of color, and then enslaved. On the back, it asks questions about the number of persons in each family employed in mining, agriculture, commerce, manufacturing, trade, navigation of the ocean, navigation of canals, lakes, rivers, and learned professional engineers. We were building railroads going west at this point. We were building canals. There was, we were into the Great Lakes areas of the country. So there was a lot of shipping, and they were really trying to figure out who was doing what. And it was an early stab at GDP, gross domestic product, and all that kind of thing. There's a column asking for the name of pensioners for revolutionary or military services. And then also their age. And then again, the questions for both white and colored as to deaf and dumb, blind and insane. Not totally sure why they combined blind and insane, but that's what they did. And then there's a section on school where it asks about how many are in university or college, how many are scholars at academies and grammar schools, how many are students at primary and common schools, and how many white persons over 20 years of age who cannot read and write. And yes, it is white persons because it was in many places still illegal to teach the enslaved persons how to read and write. Didn't stop people, but it was illegal. 1850 and 1860, they separated out the free, Schedule 1 was the free inhabitant, Schedule 2 was the enslaved inhabitant. And on this you see, again, Thomas Allen in Marlborough County, South Carolina. The dwelling, they've started doing the house number in the order of visitation, families numbered in the order of visitation, and the name of every person in the household as of June 1, 1850. So this, in the free inhabitants, gets you an every name listing of who is living in the household. Asked for their age, their sex, their color, limited to white, black, or mulatto, their profession, occupation, or trade of each male person. So even if a woman had a trade or occupation, it will if the census taker was following directions, it will not be listed. However, I have seen census takers not follow directions, so sometimes you get lucky. And that is every male over 15 years of age, they want their trade, profession, or occupation. They want the value of real estate owned. And this one adds the place of birth, naming the state, territory, of or county. They also want to know if they married within the year and if they attended school within the year. And if persons over 20 years of age who cannot read and write. And this is in 1860, I think. And then whether they are deaf and dumb, blind, insane, idiotic, pauper, or convict. So there's some lovely little demographics in here that could be the right gem that gives you the route to a different set of records. The 1850 and 1860 slave schedules are the same questions except for one. So I just blew up the 1850 schedule a little bit larger. And you will see it is the name of the owner. Now, I have seen where it's the name of the overseer or the manager of the property. But typically it is the owner. Sometimes it is the executor if an estate is in probate and pending. So you see there on the left, Thompson W. Allen, 1 30-year-old female, black. 1 22-year-old female, black. 1 22-year-old male, black. 1 10-year-old male, black, etc. down through his enslaved. It does tell the age, sex, and color, black or mulatto. There are going to be places like Louisiana where they may break that color down into quadroon and other smaller demographics of, quote, race. And then one of the other questions that are asked are how many fugitives from the state and the number manumitted. So if you had freed slaves through that year, you would need to claim that on this. The 1860 slave schedule also adds a column for the number of slave houses. So, anyway. In 1870, we come to the first of the censuses that lists everybody by name together. So 1865, we have the Emancipation Proclamation. 1868, we have a lot of changes in what we're counting, population, who is eligible, not just white male landowners can vote, but and have to pay taxes, but anyone who pays taxes can vote. Theoretically, I know that there are lots of controversies and challenges that came up in that point. But anyway, on this, you start also seeing more of the, in the last couple, hopefully you've observed at the top of the page, the page numbers, the inhabitants, and the location. The forms keep getting more standardized and give us more information. They tell you who the assistant marshal is, who is doing the enumeration. By this point, it wasn't always assistant marshals. By 1850, they were hiring some people to do the census, just like they did in 2020. They hired a whole army of people to do the census, and then we couldn't do it the way it was planned. So I hope everybody participated. But in this, you will notice the columns are there, and the dwelling and number visited. So my Joseph Allen was number 23. The family was number 24. So there was somewhere in there that had a two families living at one address, basically. This is rural South Carolina. You're not going to see a lot of that, but in a larger city where you have an apartment building, even in the early period, you're going to see a lot of families in one dwelling number because they're in an apartment house. So the name of each person residing there as of June 1, 1870, the age, sex, color, and they start expanding the colors. So sometimes you can see Indian, sometimes you can see Chinese, even though the Chinese Exclusion Act lasted to the 20th century. But they start expanding the racial definition. And then they want the profession, occupation, or trade of each person over 15. That includes women as well as men. So before it was just male, now anybody who's working has their occupation, trade, or profession. The value of real estate and the value of their personal estate. The place of birth. And they really mean on the state or country. And if the father or mother were foreign born, if they were born within that year, what month? And if they married within that year, what month? And then whether they attended school within the year, who cannot read, cannot write. Again, whether they are deaf and dumb, blind, insane, idiotic, pauper, or convict. And then there are two questions about constitutional relations. For male citizens 21 or older, if that is the case, column, what is that, 19, second to the last on the right-hand side, that says, hey, you're eligible to vote. Because remember, women don't get that until 1920. So, and then if you are a male citizen, 21 or older, where your right to vote is denied on other grounds than rebellion or other crime. I'm not sure what other grounds there are, but that's the loophole that gives those who have not signed their oath of allegiance back to the United States government, because that would be rebellion. So anyway, if anybody finds a record that actually has something marked in that column, I'd love to hear the story, because I haven't found anything in that column in any of the records I have looked at for 1870. So, you know, there's got to be a fun story there somewhere. So, in the 1880 census, they actually add the name of the street and house number if you are in a city. So again, we're starting to formalize our towns, our cities. They are growing much larger. So if you are in New York City or Long Island or one of those boroughs, if you're in Boston, if you're in Baltimore, you're in New Orleans, you're going to be expanding and being able to start putting neighborhoods together through the census. They add instructions for if you are under 1 year of age to list the month the child was born, the relationship to head of household. So up until 1880, the relationship to head of household is implied because it is not listed or stated whether you are the child or the stepchild or the nephew or the father-in-law, or whoever to the head of household. So it's just one of those situations where you can use it as a good clue, but just because they're in the household doesn't always mean the relationship is what you're assuming the relationship might be. The occupation of each person, both male and female, any number of months unemployed during that census year, the health questions, deaf, dumb, blind, idiotic, etc. Education questions, whether you've attended school within the year, can you read and write if you're an adult. And then nativity question for each person, i.e. what state or country were you born, and their parents, which is sometimes helpful because you can sometimes tell very easily if this is a stepmom and which kids were hers and which kids were the first wife. Because there's a mismatch in where the mother was born. So especially if people have moved, or if you know there's a possibility, and there's always a possibility of a remarriage, a death of a spouse and a remarriage, you may find out some interesting things. Now, some people just don't know where their parents were born, so sometimes the information is slightly suspect, but overall, you're probably going to be fairly good on all of this. So in this example, Joseph Allen, no street name or number, because this was out in the country. They were the 17th household visited, the 17th family visited. He's white, male, 36, married, farmer, 4 months unemployed during the year. And then South Carolina, South Carolina, South Carolina. So And he can read and write. I'm not sure why I didn't do those tick marks, but I have a feeling it's because there was nothing filled in those columns for him. So, it is what it is. So 1890, we have a lovely problem that in, I believe, 1921, there was a fire at the Commerce Building in DC. There was significant water damage, including, in addition to what burned. And there are 6,160 people on the surviving pages, and it's, I want to say, about 3,400 households. You are extremely fortunate. There are a few families in North Carolina where parts of a couple counties' records survive. No county that survived is complete, and they did it in an unusual fashion. So you see here an example from 1890 of a Thompson and Rhoda Allen, who are not my Thompson and Rhoda. These are in Illinois. So your reminder that you can't just go by name. You have to look at location. You have to put on your thinking cap and make sure, yeah, mine were in South Carolina. They were not in Illinois. Nothing indicates they ever went to Illinois. And oh, the ages are wrong. So, but it makes a great example. And so there were one household per page, room for 5 on the front, 5 on the back. And then there was an additional page for larger households. And it asked some great questions. And this is why I'm so bummed that it's not in existence for any of my relatives. It asked whether you were a soldier, sailor, or Marine during the Civil War, US or Confederate, or the widow of such a person, the mother of how many children, and how many of those children are living, the number of years in the United States, whether naturalized, whether naturalization papers have been taken out, whether able to speak English, and if not, what language do you speak? And it's just one of those things that, there are a whole bunch of genealogy wishes that we would go back in time and alter. This would be one of them, the loss of military records in 1973 fire would be another one. They've saved more of those than they were able to save in 1890. Now, this is another census from 1890. It's one of the special schedules that we'll talk about a few more in just a sec. But this is the 1890 veteran schedule. Again, this is from Nebraska, and it was taken after the date of the census. So you look at when this was enumerated, when this was taken, and it primarily lists Union veterans and widows. So it may not be relevant to your search, but if Confederate names were added, they were to be later marked through. So they used this as they were starting to assign some of the pension benefits and some of the other medical benefits and things for Union soldiers. And the people going around to the houses wrote down anybody who served, and some of them didn't pay attention to whether they were Union or Confederate, or War of 1812, or Indian Wars, or whatever the case might have been. And sometimes you find the treasure. Sometimes we love the census takers who didn't follow directions, as long as it's to our benefit, not the ones who just didn't fill in anything that they were supposed to fill in. But sometimes the overachievers will give us a locality that we didn't know more specifically than just a country or a state of birth, Sometimes you get the person who filled in all of the information for the Confederate widow, and then when they were checking things back in DC, they would then re-record and make notes and nope, not eligible, that kind of thing. So even if you don't have someone who was a Union veteran, if they were a veteran of any type, military veteran of any type at the point that the census was being taken in 1890, it's worth taking a look at it, just simply because any straw we can grasp is better than nothing in 1890. So these special schedules, as I said, the veteran schedule in 1890 is one of them. There were agricultural schedules taken between 1850 and 1885, defective dependent delinquent classes in 1880, the industry and manufacturing schedules in 1810, 1820, and then 1850 through 1885. And then in the 1885 census was only taken in certain places that we were expanding into that part of the country, and that there wasn't an 1880 federal census. It was a substitute. So not in South Carolina. Mortality schedules 1850 to 1885, and then in 1900, only Minnesota. But if you're in Minnesota in 1900 and had somebody die in the year before, the calendar year before, or the 12 months before the census was taken, then you'll find them in the mortality schedules. And then there were some social statistics in 1850, 60, and 70. By 1900, they are keeping those statistics in a different way. And currently, it's the American Community Survey, and it's done on a quarterly basis. So how they collect the statistics has changed, but we were figuring it out. So in the agricultural censuses, this is one from 1850, it asks questions such as how much land is under cultivation, the types of livestock, the crops by yield, and check the back of the page. Oops, sorry. That's the blow up of the category. My person's further down the page, but it tells you how many acres, how many are improved, the livestock in various categories, and starts going across the page. You flip to the back of the page. Don't get confused. The back of the page is to the left. The front of the next page is to the right. You get the rest of your person. You have to remember what line you're on. And so it continues asking questions about yield on particular types of crops. So these can be helpful because it can help tell how profitable your person's agriculture was. There is a minimum number of acres, and I forgot to look it up today as to how many, but there is a minimum number of acres. So you could have a small farm that might not have an agricultural schedule. But if it's at least a couple of acres, you're probably going to show up on the schedule. The mortality schedule. And you can see there are instructions on the left, there's information bottom left, and then there is the listing of people on the top right, and some remarks at the bottom that basically say somebody reviewed the cases if they weren't actually attending, and this is who certified those deaths. And in 1880, someone near and dear to the Kennedy Room's heart, Dr. Lionel Chalmers Kennedy passed away and is listed here in line 2 of the mortality schedule. So he died shortly before the census was taken in 1880. And he was 63, male, white. and born in South Carolina. Both his parents were born in South Carolina. He was a physician, and he died of pneumonia. And then the doc is certifying it. His wife, Helen Sue Stevens Kennedy, is in his name, and to remember him, founded our library. Not just helped, she drove it. But our Kennedy Room of Local History is named for Dr. and Mrs. Kennedy. And you will see that this was received at the in DC, July 14th, 1880. And it was a June 1st date. So it was persons who died during the year ending May 31st, 1880. And you get one of the Carlyles was the enumerator. So, state censuses, I'm not going to hit on this too much because our topic is federal tonight, but the federal census can give you a lot of information about your family if you look beyond just the names and the years. I had some moments over time where I've looked back at a census where I thought I knew all of the answers and went, wait, what's that tick mark over there for? Oh, they served in the military. I didn't know they served in the military. Let me go look for military records. So you don't, you do occasionally need to look at what the whole thing says, because sometimes you can find out things like on the 1890 census, and we'll see some of this on some of the early 1900 censuses, where it asks, how many children has this woman born? How many are still living? The answer will usually appall you because childhood mortality was so high. So, but in addition to the federal censuses on the 0 years, and the one I'm told happened in 1885 that I've never seen any record of, but I'm told by experts that it's there, that states did their own censuses. And there is a handout or a page at the end of the handout that is a listing of all of the days and years that various states did censuses. Don't get your hopes up for South Carolina. There are fragments of like 1.5 censuses. Virginia just really didn't do them after the 1624 census. So your mileage will vary depending on place. Kansas did censuses from 1855 when they were a territory, and then all the way up until 1925 on the 5 years. They're not as detailed as the federal censuses, but they at least can fill in some of the blanks, help you know within a 5-year range when someone moved one place or another. And okay, questions, and hopefully everybody got the, yes. And I'm gonna put the handout into the chat one more time because people were popping in and out, and I'm sorry if you were waiting in the waiting room and I didn't catch you to get in, because trying to do all of this at once is a little difficult on a small screen. Surface screen is not very big. So next month, we'll talk more about censuses in the 20th century, 1900 through 1950, those Indian censuses that are one of the other special schedules. If I have time, when I time that one out, I will also throw in a couple of the other special censuses just because they're interesting to look at. Questions. Let's see. Yeah, put your questions in the chat box. As many. So, and Sorry, I just lost my chat box. Let's see. I was trying to move up on the thing and it, to see any questions. And I do apologize, everybody, for the technical issues we were having on our side. And I know this is a little echoey today. It's less echoey than the room I was using last year. But I have no in-person people tonight, just my Zoom people. And so no bodies are filling up the room to help it do. So has anybody found one of those 1885 censuses? Because that's really cool if you have. And trying to think. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and figure out maybe how to stop the recording. Okay, I'm stopping the recording, yes.